So for today's video, we're going to talk about a new policy adopted by the Columbus Police Department. Or I guess you could say this is a new order that was issued by the Chief of Police in Columbus, Ohio, regarding officers serving arrest warrants in the evening hours. I'm going to give you my take on it, but before we do that, I want you to hear from Polk County, Florida Sheriff Judd Grady. And I'm going to let you hear his opinion, and then I'm going to piggyback off of that.
Sheriff, a lot of people have been saying to me today, why does an arrest warrant have to be served at that hour? Isn't that unsafe? Can you speak to that and why this happens overnight?
Certainly, the people who ask why an arrest warrant has to be served at that hour are morons. Okay? That warrant's valid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We received a call for service that person was at that residence at that time. What do? She's running from us. She's always been running from us. She failed to appear. What do? Say, hey, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. We don't serve warrants at 3 o'clock in the morning. Know this, if you got a warrant outstanding, we're going to arrest you at 2, 3, 4, 5, anytime we can find you. We found this person, and we were going to arrest her. So tell them.
Alrighty, so there you heard Sheriff Judd. It is Judd, right? I had it pulled up, but yes, Sheriff Judd's opinion on this matter. Now, I'm not going to take such an extreme stance towards it, but I do stand behind pretty much everything that he said. These warrants, if you have a warrant out for your arrest, that warrant is good 24/7, and there's no reason for officers not to try to serve a warrant during those hours, especially when you have people that are on the run from the law and avoiding having that warrant served and avoiding kind of being taken into jail. So here is a headline. I don't know if everybody is aware of this, but in light of the Donovan Lewis shooting in Columbus, Ohio, that was the man with domestic violence and a weapon charge warrant out for his arrest. He was in his bed when officers entered his apartment, ended up shooting and killing him. The headline reads, Columbus Police Chief issues new policy for serving warrants. I highlighted the important part here. It says no pre-planned arrest warrants shall be served at private residences for all misdemeanor offenses, including domestic violence and non-violent felonies, between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. In my opinion, when police chiefs and police organizations come down with policy statements like this, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction in order to kind of appease the crowd, when it's my opinion that we should be doing more to educate the crowd and help them understand why these warrants are being served at this hour. The clip that you saw in the beginning with Sheriff Judd, he was at a press conference talking about a young sheriff's deputy who was killed in the line of duty. He was killed by friendly fire while they were serving a warrant because the person that they were trying to arrest in the early morning hours pulled a gun that turned out to be a BB gun on officers, but they fired upon that person and ended up striking this sheriff's deputy who was outside of the building on the back side holding containment. When he was asked about this particular circumstance, serving it at night, I understand, for one, why he was so emotional with his response, but also I don't understand how time of day is a relevant question, especially in that case, because everybody in the house was awake, including the person who was holding a firearm, that it looked like it was an intentional setup by that person. Now, the incident that happened in Columbus, Ohio, I saw a lot of people asking Why are officers even trying to serve a warrant at night? This is where I want to try to answer that question. And I have a question of my own that I will pose in a minute if I don't forget. But people need to understand that police officers are working 24/7. The officers who work at night sometimes have extremely busy shifts. The night crews typically are working on somewhat of a skeleton crew. They have fewer officers that work at night than any other shift. Because of that, if you have one or two major incidents on a zone, they are all going to be tied up, and calls for service are going to hold basically until first shift gets in the next morning. There's going to be, I don't know, almost equally as many nights, probably more often than not, nights where there are no major incidents that happen. You have these officers that are out there getting paid to do a job, and they don't want to just sit on their ass and do nothing. They want to go out and earn their paycheck. They want to go out and provide the service that the city is paying them to do. When there's nobody out driving around, there's no shootings to respond to, no other major incidents, what they will do is they will run a local warrant check, and they'll get a list of everybody in the area that has a warrant. It is extremely common for officers on third shift. I worked third shift for about a decade to get that list, and when it gets slow, literally just start going door to door on that list looking for people who have warrants. It is incredibly common. In the 10 years that I worked third shift, not a single time was I involved in a shooting serving one of those warrants, nor were any of my coworkers. It simply has never been an issue to knock on the door, talk to the people inside, get permission to enter the home, or enter the home if you have a warrant for that person, this, that, and the other thing. But that's just what they do. And then when people say, well, why don't the officers just serve it during the day? I can tell you that I work during the day now. And there's a variety of reasons that it just doesn't work. For one, it gets busy during the day. It's also very hard to get around. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people out and about. You don't want to be surrounding a house during the day because you're going to draw a crowd. That is one reason. Another reason is that people, generally speaking, aren't home during the day. So if somebody has a warrant and it is written to a specific address, you can go to that address every single day of the week from 9 to 5, and you're not going to find that person there. If you expect second shift to go out and serve these warrants, the officers who work second shift, which is either 2 to 10 or 3 to 11, they are even more busy than any other shift. That is typically the highest run volume shift in any given city. The other thing that I want to bring up, and this is what I think is probably the most important part of this discussion that is being left out, is when it comes to these situations, we're forgetting about who the real victim is. When you have a person who has an active warrant for domestic violence, there's an actual victim out there. In this case with Donovan Lewis, he had a female that he had gotten pregnant. She was visibly pregnant. She was obviously pregnant, and he assaulted her. She, to my knowledge, she lived with him in that apartment. And when she got the guts to call the police and have warrants filed for her, for his arrest, she knew that she was in danger. So she had to leave her home and go hide someplace. So as long as Donovan Lewis was out on the run with warrants for domestic violence, this young woman who was pregnant was unable to return to her own home. I think that's a significant point that everybody is forgetting about in cases like this. And the officers were doing their best to apprehend him and take him into jail so that the real victim in this case can have a little bit of peace of mind. They can go to sleep at night knowing that the person who had assaulted them is not out on the street and they are no longer in danger of being assaulted, but also letting this person know that you're free to go back to your home and continue your daily life. You no longer have to hide. With policy changes like this, and this isn't just happening in Columbus, Ohio, I'm willing to bet this is happening in other places around the country. The effect that it's going to have is that more victims like this young pregnant woman are going to have to live in fear that their assailant is out on the run and he's avoiding apprehension. And also that she's not going to be able to go back home because the person who assaulted her is literally in her house, laying in her bed, preventing her from doing so. She runs the risk every day that he's out on the run. If she has to go back to her place to get some clothes, even if she believes he's not there, she runs the risk of returning home and having him come home while she's there. And there's a good chance that she won't be able to get to a phone to call the police. There's a lot of circumstances that could occur, and there's a reason that these warrants need to be served as soon as possible. Changes like this don't allow that to happen. And this is one of those unfortunate things that happens as a result of people who don't understand police work being in charge of policy. And when I say that, I'm generally referring to the politicians, because I feel quite confident that that is how this order was handed down. So those are going to be my thoughts for today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later.
So the bottom line is it's a dangerous job. When you're doing this, you teach and coach and provide equipment and training, but sometimes despite all of everything that we teach and coach and do, and he was doing exactly like he was trained, bad things happen. Horrible things happen.